The leading Egyptologists claim that the Great Pyramid of Giza was a glorified tomb for the Egyptian pharaohs. However, it's the only monument left of the original seven wonders of the world. The structure was created with impeccable mathematical precision, and it's an absolutely unique and mysterious feat of construction and engineering. The only problem is the Great Pyramid has none of the characteristics of a tomb, and in fact it's missing extravagant artifacts, ornate wall art, sealed entrances, or elaborately decorated coffins, or even mummies for that matter. However, the known data indicates it was built with very specific and unique materials. The same materials are used today to conduct or insulate electrical energy. The newly understood data is leading more and more historians to believe the pyramids may have been so much more than a final resting place. I believe the Pyramid of Giza was not a tomb at all, and probably was an ancient power plant generating and transmitting electricity to the civilization surrounding it. Sounds impossible? Let's look at the data and get a little deeper, shall we? To start, it's important for us to comprehend the tremendous amount of effort that went into creating these feats of engineering. The Pyramids of Giza are a part of a network of at least 118 of these types of poorly understood structures scattered throughout ancient Egypt alone. Those numbers don't even include the pyramids found throughout other parts of the world. With our current understanding of how civilizations built their monuments, it would have taken no less than 20 years of non-stop labor to build these so-called tombs. That's assuming at least 20,000 workers slaved daily, and still to this day, most historians can't prove exactly how, why, or when they were built. So this begs the question to be asked then, what final resting place of the dead could possibly be so important that it would warrant such phenomenal effort, time, and precise engineering? Even without knowing that they have nothing in common with regular tombs, just standing in front of them, one quickly realizes that the amount of work that went into these for a dead guy is just ridiculous. The so-called experts make conclusions based on the assumption that ancient civilizations were more primitive than us. Well, what if intellectual evolution isn't always linear? Could an advanced technology have been lost and rediscovered centuries ago? Could it be possible that an ancient culture had knowledge and used the power to create amazing and destructive things? Let's look at another case where an ancient form of power generating technology appeared to have been used and then forgotten. We know that Edison and Tesla brought electricity into common use, moving us into the modern 20th century. However, in Iraq in 1934, 3 artifacts were found placed conspicuously together: an ancient ceramic pot, a tube of copper, and a rod of iron, which when combined with a liquid acid like lemon juice can be used to create a chemical reaction that produces an electrical charge, much like a modern battery. Today this is known as the Baghdad battery, and tests have shown this thing to be over 2,000 years old when they found it. So 10 years after their discovery, an experiment was conducted using grape juice and other similar materials, successfully generated a few volts of electricity. So there are now dozens of videos on YouTube recreating this technology, and some of them producing up to 4 volts of electricity. So today you can simply just search online and find instructions on how to create your own using these same chemical principles. So historians have long assumed that thousands of years ago there was no knowledge of this type of technology, that it's just a mere coincidence that even though we've long marveled over the artifacts with intricate gold plating which requires electricity to be created in the first place, so this much we do know. Energy generation happens as a result of simple chemical reactions. And it can be done pretty much by anybody with 4 basic materials. So here's some of the important data about the structure and the materials used to build the pyramid. For starters, it contains angled tunnels which lead not only into the pyramid, but deep underground with many rooms and areas still to be explored. No other tomb ever discovered has needed a shaft directed into a pool of water deep within the earth. We also know that centuries ago there were giant swiveling doors leading into this structure. These doors weighed no less than 20 tons, but miraculously they were so well engineered that anyone could move these things with a simple, gentle push of the hand. Since no Egyptian tomb has ever been found to be deliberately accessible, what was the builder's interest in visiting the supposed mummies inside over and over? Could the door have been serving a different purpose, perhaps containing the insulating... Once upon a time, the Great Pyramids of Giza were covered in a white polished limestone, referred to as casing stones. The angles made in this reflective stoneware were joined so perfectly so as to have a smooth and flat appearance. This would have made the giant structures brightly reflect the light that the sun shone on it like a giant mirror. It would also have made a perfect insulation inside the structure. Unfortunately, a large earthquake in 1903 disrupted the casing stones as they were moved to make other structures. Today, all that remains is the inner core of the pyramid. Imagine the incredible amount of light that would have been reflected. Calls to one's curiosity, doesn't it? So does the reason for the insulation. Seems odd to draw attention to the dead this way, doesn't it? Maybe to keep the mummies warm, or perhaps cool inside, or perhaps maybe even something else. Now let's talk about the material dolomite that was used on the inner surfaces of the pyramid. Dolomite is known to increase electrical conductivity directly relative to the amount of pressure placed on it. Higher pressure against it would create greater electrical current. And next, lining the passageways of the underground tunnels of the pyramid with granite, which is slightly radioactive. It contains a high amount of quartz crystal with metals, and it's a well-known conductor of piezoelectricity. You see, this form of piezoelectricity occurs as a result of stress or pressure on the quartz, which is demonstrated by popular shake-to-wind watches that are sold pretty much everywhere these days. So this granite actually ionizes the air inside the pyramid. It creates a chemical reaction which yet again increases the conductivity of the electricity. So when the electrons are given the chance to bypass sections of the rock via some conductor, it allows for larger amounts of current to flow through this thing. It's amazing. Another important material that was used to construct them was the mysterious mortar. Over 500,000 tons of it was used, which holds the giant stones in place. And although it's been studied many times over the years, modern technology has yet to exactly recreate this type of concrete, which comes from the local sediment. This type of mortar can withstand extreme amounts of pressure, and amazingly, it's even stronger than the stones themselves. Clearly, it's contributed to keeping the monument intact for all these thousands of years. I wonder if there's another reason why they used a material like this that could withstand such high amounts of pressure. So, limestone, dolomite, granite, all supposedly used for a tomb, are in fact analogous to the exact same materials that we use for modern conductivity. They all share the relationship with high pressure and friction, which increases their electroconductivity. Just northwest of the Great Pyramid is the Serapeum. Here there are 20 huge granite boxes, each weighing at least 100 tons. Classic Egyptologists say that these are coffins, yet the granite here came from over 500 miles away. Each box is so large and so heavy that there's no way possible they could have fit through the existing tunnels and openings in this structure. So these supposed sarcophagi were somehow built into the structure with such a precision that they're all within 10,000ths of an inch of being perfectly flat. Any worthwhile electrical engineer can explain that a container serving as an energy capacitor or a battery must be made entirely of the same substance, so that there's no interruption of the magnetic field, and for electrical conductivity. Could these boxes be just that? If so, there's a centuries-old granite sarcophagus on display in an Egyptian museum that's thought to be unfinished. However, unlike those in the pyramids, this one's cracked. This would suggest that it was abandoned because the crack would have interrupted the magnetic field, keeping it from successfully serving its purpose. The data supports the possibility of an electrical use theory rather than a tomb. Since these supposed sarcophagi are clearly way too large for a human being, the accepted theory is that they were, believe it or not, used for bulls. Supposedly the pharaohs prized bulls, yet no bulls were ever found here. It's fair to say that somebody was definitely full of bull, but not these sarcophagus. To add to the mystery, in 1993, a mysterious and inaccessible room was discovered after remaining hidden for thousands of years. Appearing to have been deliberately hidden by the structure's builders, the room came to be called the Queen's Chamber, and was finally explored in 2011 with a very small and remote camera, only to reveal a queen's mummy? Nope. Instead, they found a carefully crafted copper wire with very intricate instructions painted on the floor, which appeared to be an ancient wiring diagram. Pretty cool, huh? Now look at any battery, from those used in large power plants to the smallest pellet batteries used in your modern watch, and you'll see that they all require some type of metal, like copper, to create the simple chemical reactions known as potential difference. So running electrical current through a copper wire will produce a short-range magnetic field, right? So you add a second coil to that, and the power is now transferred from one coil to the other. A windowless dolomite room with copper wiring would then, in theory, create a higher potential on one wall, which would transfer that energy to the lower potential on the other wall. You follow me? Consequently, releasing that electromagnetic energy into the so-called Queen's Chamber. Unfortunately, these wires have since disappeared entirely from history. Your mainstream Egyptologists claim there's no functionality whatsoever to this room. They also claim there's no functionality of anything in the structure other than being a regular old-fashioned resting place. However, it does beg to be mentioned that the self-acclaimed leading Egyptologist Zahi Hawass was indicted for theft of Egyptian antiquities. Now, while it can still be argued that the electrical materials used to construct the Great Pyramid are simply coincidental, because an energy generator still requires a catalyst from another source, right? Well, perhaps then this explains why the pyramids are geographically located over a powerful natural generating station, underground rivers and aquifers. Water moving up and down inside the structure would generate piezoelectricity, much like the shake-to-wind watch we talked about earlier. Now, it's been proven that thousands of years ago, the Nile River passed directly by where the structures now stand, and of course this brings to debate about the age of the pyramids themselves, along with the weathering on the nearby Sphinx. This all indicates that the monuments are actually twice as old as they are currently assumed to be. This makes them at least 10,000 years old. Perhaps that's why there's no documentation of their construction in ancient Egypt. So if water was a source of power, then it would have had to have traveled up the limestone base on the principle of capillary action. Now this happens when a small area or surface gets wet and then is absorbed into the entire surrounding area of that surface. So water flowing near or underneath the pyramid could have been absorbed as it passed over the limestone. Now this could even travel upwards to the top of the structure. The quartz lining the tunnels of the pyramid would be subjected to a great amount of stress and vibration, creating massive amounts of piezoelectricity. Now, with that high pressure and the speed of the rising water, this would be very similar to a chemical engine and generate electromagnetic energy within the structure using the materials that it was constructed out of, and then directing it upwards toward the now missing capstone. Now, why would they do this? You see, guys, the geographical data of the pyramid will give us some clues here. It's located at exactly the right point, which magnifies the electromagnetic forces it produces on this planet, where the Earth's telluric currents are at their strongest. So there's a strong and measurable electromagnetic field that's generated at the bottom of the Great Pyramid. This power would rise up through the upper layers via these chemical reactions and resonate at a focal point in a process that's long since been forgotten. Now today we don't know for sure what capped the Great Pyramid, but there's speculation that it may have been gold. This of course explains why it's long since been missing. If it were gold, this could have created a focal point for all that conductive energy to be directed up and broadcasted high into the ionosphere. If superconductive materials were used to create this enormous monument for energy generation purposes, then the potential for something even more amazing might have been possible. Wireless electricity. Sound far-fetched? One bold and extraordinary man swore this was possible. He may have even showed us how to do it. We know that Nikola Tesla, as the solitary genius responsible for the electric engine, the radio, the laser, radar, and for creating a tremendously competitive spirit in the likes of one Thomas Edison. We also know Tesla sought above all else to serve mankind. And in fact, despite his extraordinary contributions, he's scarcely known or credited for his genius. At the 1893 World's Fair, Tesla transmitted electricity wirelessly to a light bulb that he held in his hands. He also created the infamous Tesla coil, which is used more today for show rather than its purpose it was intended to serve. More importantly, we know that Tesla claimed that he had perfected the method of harnessing and transmitting free wireless energy using the magnetic nature of our own planet. In a patent Tesla filed in September of 1897, he claimed at 30,000 feet there's a naturally occurring stratum of rarefied air that would conduct electric currents at high voltages. In his proposed system, there was a giant transmitter which would then transmit millions of volts of electricity up into the atmosphere. Then he had some type of receiver that received the electricity and then reduced that voltage down to convenient potentials to be used by the consumers. So, in an experiment in the last week of July of 1903, nearby residents claimed to have witnessed Tesla successfully conduct his experiment at the Wardenclyffe Tower. Afterwards, Tesla himself was quoted as saying that it lit up the night skies as if it were a giant fluorescent tube. It's even been reported that he successfully wirelessly transmitted pictures and sounds while conducting these types of experiments. Now, unfortunately, all of his work and plans have been mercilessly destroyed or hidden away over the years, and none of this can be proven. Sadly, Tesla's technology was confiscated shortly after his death. He died impoverished, and the powers that be at the time destroyed his tower, claiming it was being used by German spies. Had Tesla succeeded in his mission for the distribution of power on this planet, it would have been completely different today. You know, looking at comparing Tesla's technology to the pyramid, the location, the height, the electromagnetic materials, we've seen induction between copper wires work for short distances, and for long distance transfers, the same principle can be applied when acoustic energy is converted to kinetic energy and the frequencies match. The same way that an opera singer can shatter a glass when the sound of the wave he's singing matches the resonant frequency of the glass. So if there's a magnetically oscillating current, you can create a second one possessing the same frequency, and the wireless transmission can pass through solid materials over long distances. The frequency which would have been released from the pyramid would have had to match the surrounding area. Perhaps this would explain all of the obsessions with obelisks, the tall monuments that could have acted as receivers, especially if there was a quartz stone on top of them. This would also explain the ancient carvings in Egypt, which clearly indicate light sources. It's crazy to think any sane person would even argue against this. In the Hathor Temple, the Dendara light is such an example, as it perfectly resembles modern technology, showing a wire inside of a bulb-like device and a box in which appears to be the power supply. Across from this carving is a similar image, except the technology appears to be falling under the control of a reptilian-looking being, as though it's some type of warning of the potential to abuse this technology. The mainstream historians scoff and make more primitive conclusions, but still, the pyramids show no sign of soot from flame torches for lighting throughout it, and instead there are multiple carvings which show these antenna-like objects that appear to be some sort of transmitter, near another object shaped like the famous symbol, the Ankh, which appears to be the receiver. So given all this data, it seems so much more believable that the Great Pyramid functioned using the same principles and conditions that Tesla sought to demonstrate. that they conducted and directed electromagnetic energy into the ionosphere, where it transmitted electricity wirelessly to receivers within the civilization. We've long been told the Great Pyramids are just tombs, but that answer poses more questions than it answers. Why then do they have nothing in common with other tombs? Why the unique choice of construction materials made to build it from, including the very materials required for conducting modern power? Why the oversized granite boxes proven to have never contained any mummies? Or the slightly radioactive ones, clearly too large to house human corpses? Why the alignment with the North Pole? Why the 20-ton swivel doors? The intricate tunnels and chambers, shafts and areas still yet to be discovered and explored. Why is there no soot from the fire or torches anywhere inside the structure? And why do the tunnels protrude so deep into the earth in ancient aquifers? These mysteries still elude our sense of modern understanding. But these days, more and more people are accepting the possibility that the Great Pyramid of Giza had a more important function than we currently can understand. We know there's a heightened electromagnetic measurement around the pyramid that's equivalent to that made during an electrical storm. We also know that if you look at it from space, you can see that there's clearly an 8-sided figure, not 4, and that there are strange heat spots that are only observable with special equipment. They have unique electrical materials within them, including copper, a design that suggests high pressure and water power. They have a powerful magnetic nature and natural construction about them, and specific placement over the exact telluric currents. They are aligned with the stars, and the unique art of the area shown depicts of wired light sources. All these things suggest that there's more to the story than we've been told, and all of these circumstances make the likelihood very high that the Great Pyramid was created to be a compact energy broadcasting system that transmitted energy wirelessly. The sheer implications for this level of understanding of electrical power by an ancient culture is amazing, and it would rewrite history as we know it. Now, do you think that free energy could be transmitted wirelessly around the world, ever? And whether or not you believe that, do you think that if we could really do that as a species, that they would actually let us do it? Think about that for a second. And thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit your like button. That's it for me this time. Data out.